What's going on, everyone? It's Ben from YGO from Zero, back with another Retro Yu-Gi-Oh! Video, and it's a very exciting time for the channel right now, as I'm about to dive into a new format, Warrior format. But before I get to that, I covered Amsterdam format, which is basically, what if you used the cards from Ancient Sanctuary and some promos that came out, along with the April 2004 limited list. But now I'm kind of curious about what would happen if you would apply the August 2004 limited list. And you might be thinking, well, why isn't this, a video covering the format made with the August 2004 ban list? And the reason for that is that the August 2004 ban list was a sort of like hypothetical ban list. It was kind of weird. They basically posted a bunch of cards that would be banned, and they said that those bans would go into effect in October. But then when October rolled around, there was the October 2004 limited list, which banned some cards, true, but it also, limited other cards that do drastically change things. So it's kind of a weird sort of format to talk about because it didn't really exist. So that's why I'm not really going to feature it much on my channel. As well as that, I do think the format is actually tier 0, so it's not really interesting from that perspective as well. But I'll get to why I think it's tier 0 later, but first let's just talk about what the cards that were actually banned were. So you'll see here on Dueling Book, we have April 2004 TCG lined up here. So let's go to August 2004 TCG and see how the ban list changes. And you'll notice right off the bat that nothing changed among the limited and semi-limited cards here. And also, this didn't really show on this page, but there were no other cards added to this list. So it just banned certain problematic limited cards. So let's go over those bans real quick. First off, Chaos Emerald Dragon Envoy of the End, banned. I think this is a very good ban. This card is really sacky because you bring it out, attack in, use its effect to burn your opponent to death. And that is a very sort of like, I mean, I'm not going to say degenerate, but I will say that it's something that can swing the game in your favor a lot more than BLS can. Although BLS is still very strong, Chaos Emerald Dragon is definitely the more frustrating of the two. Next up, we got Saying It and Witch of the Black Forest banned. This is kind of interesting, and just cutting off the recruiters, which is kind of neat. Maybe these were both banned because they're part of the Yada lock with like Chaos Emerald Dragon, where you bring up Chaos Emerald Dragon, pop the entire board. If you have a Saying It or Witch on field, you get to search out a Yada attack in and set up the lock. And that's why Yada is banned here as well. You'll notice that that card's banned too. But it's kind of interesting because in revisiting Chaos format, we found out that this lock is not actually that common, and it's not really the best thing you could be doing with these cards. So I don't really think that these necessarily deserve to be banned, but I get why they're banned here. Next up, we have Dark Hole banned, and Raigeki's also banned. I think this is good. It's just getting rid of the board clears. And in this format, it's a bit tougher to set up a large established board. So I think these are fine getting banned. Now, as we'll see, there is one deck that can actually really like spam out a bunch of monsters on field and make this problematic. But we'll get to that relatively soon. Next up, we got Monster Reborn getting banned. This is probably a good ban as well. Being able to get back one of your own or one of your opponent's big monsters is really threatening. Next up, we got Delinquent Duo banned. I think this is the worst of the hand rips. I get why they do it because this is the only one that actually puts you +1 in card advantage, but getting the hand knowledge is a bit more valuable, I think. So they banned the worst of them, I think, but it's a start getting rid of these hand rips that are very frustrating to deal with. Next up, we got Harpy's Feather Duster banned. I think this is a good hit as well. As just one-sided spell and trap removal. So you can never sort of get too comfortable with setting your back row. You still can't really do that with Heavy Storm, but Heavy Storm also has some counterplay because, or not counterplay necessarily, but you can sort of like suss out when your opponent has Heavy Storm. If they've set a bunch of back row, then you can feel more safe setting a bunch of back row. So there are mind games that go on with Heavy Storm that make it a bit more acceptable than Harpy's Feather Duster. Graceful Charity also banned here. I think that's good hit as well. This card lets you draw deep into your deck, this card too, so that gives you greater setup, that gives you like filtration into your deck. Very strong card. Glad to see it get banned here. I'm sure it will never come back. Next up, we got United We Stand. I'm not really sure why this got hit. I mean, I guess maybe they're afraid of certain decks just being able to get a bunch of damage now that like Raigeki and Dark Hole are gone, but realistically, this was not a problem. Next we got Imperial Order banned. Let's go. This card is easily the most toxic of the DM era, and it getting hit is very nice. Next we got Mirror Force banned. Mirror Force is a card that is just like Raigeki and Dark Hole, a way to blow out your opponent's whole board. I think it has counterplay, so I'm not necessarily sure if I would have banned it, but I can see why they would ban it. And other than that, everything is the same as the April 2004 limited list here. So you might look at these changes and think, wow, these are some healthy changes to the game. I'm sure that this format will be better than like Chaos format or even Amsterdam format. And you might be surprised to know that I think you're probably wrong. The reason why you might be mistaken about this format being better than Chaos or Amsterdam is that Triple Demox still exists, Triple Monster Gate still exists. The sort of Reasoning Gate Turbo deck that I showed off in Amsterdam format basically survives with very, very few hits. The main hits here are like Raigeki and Dark Hole, as well as like Graceful Charity to dig deeper into your combo. But for Raigeki and Dark Hole, they're mainly just used as ways to clear your opponent's board for big OTK pushes, and you need that because if your opponent has access to Raigeki and Dark Hole as well, they can just clear your entire board and then mess you up later. The issue is, if your opponent doesn't have access to Raigeki or Dark Hole, you can basically do your whole combo without real fear of your monsters getting blown out. There is still triple torrential tribute, so that is something to keep in mind, but this deck has ways to play around that with things like Giant Trunade, Jinzo, etc. And, you know, if your opponent does have the torrential tributes and you Trunade it back, then they have to set the Trunade and hope that you summon again. You can just play around that by not summoning the turn that you hit in. You don't have to worry about Mirror Force either, so you can just get aggressive with all your monsters here. Chaos Hammer Dragon was also hit, and this deck was playing 2 Chaos monsters to fuel the Dimension Fusions a bit, but you can just replace that with a Chaos Sorcerer, which is perfectly fine. Honestly, there isn't really too much that got hit out of this deck. I mean, Confiscation and Forceful Sentry still both are around at 1. This deck wasn't playing Duo, so it feels fine about that. Wasn't playing Harpy's Feather Duster either, preferring like Trunade. Although you could potentially play the Heavy Storm here instead. It did lose Monster Reborn. That is a good point because, you know, occasionally you do Reasoning, hit the Dark Minish of Chaos, get engraved, and then you want Reborn to bring that back. A Premature Burial is also fine here. And, you know, realistically, while that combo is good for extension, you've got time in this format to actually just set up your other plays with like gates and things. And we are bringing in these scapegoats. I did have these in the Amsterdam version of the deck, but I said that I'd probably cut them for things like Raigeki Break in that format to better deal with Imperial Order. With Imperial Order being gone, there's nothing really to stop this deck from doing what it does best. So you do want these scapegoats in here as protection and also as fuel for your monster gate. And also, you know, your opponent can't shut it off with Imperial Order. In addition, the scapegoat tokens can't be cleared with something like Raigeki or Dark Hole. It can still be cleared by Tribe Infecting Virus, that is true, but you're generally using this in the battle phase, and if your opponent then wastes some cards clearing your tokens with Tribe and stuff afterwards, you're ultimately fine with that, because they're ultimately losing some more cards here. You also do have ways to deal with Tribe. Your normal summonable monsters and Sacred Crane can crash into them. You've got Ring Destruction, Torrential Tribute, etc. Obviously, it doesn't feel good Torrential Tributing a Tribe, but you've got triple Torrential Tribute, so it's not the worst thing in the world. I think this deck is really, really good. I don't think it really got hit by the list at all, besides for some like minor things. I think it got majorly buffed by the list. So I'm not really going to go too deep into the card by card here, as this is basically the same deck list as in Amsterdam format. Some things I will note, though, for the side deck, we've just got a full side into Scientist FTK. The FTK decks that I showed off in my last video also weren't really that hit. Things like Graceful Charity and Reborn are the big hits there. But other than that, they don't really need a lot of the cards that got banned. So, you know, they're still doing fine. And I think that siding all the way into a Scientist FTK is very funny. And also, you know, if you do lose your first match, you can bring this in going... knowing you're going first and try and win that way. But oftentimes, like when you're going second, you want this more aggressive OTK style deck, and when you're going first, you can just rely on this FTK to achieve some wins. But that's going to do it for the deck breakdown. Let's just dive into some games and see how this deck actually does. Maybe it's actually not tier 0 like I believe. Okay, we got a match against Hoy, a frequent guest on the channel. Always a pleasure to have them on. We do win the rock, paper, scissors, so we will be going first here. And if we had the Science FTK stuff in the deck, maybe we would have been able to FTK. But as is, we just got to try and set up for an OTK. This is a really, really good hand to start with. We're going to go for Reasoning here. They call 8, which is what you want to call, because 3 DMOC are legal here. And it does hit an 8. So we don't get that back. We also lose some powerful spells from grave. But we got a lot of plays for next turn. We're going to set Scapegoat here to protect ourselves. Then we can change of heart their monster, bring out Blowback Dragon, just attack in that way. We also do have Darks Engraved now for our BLS. So if we ever get access to a Sacred Crane, that will set up that and be very strong there. So we're going to set the Scapegoat pass back to our opponent. They bring out a Heavy Storm. We're going to fire the Scapegoat and get 4 tokens on field here. They are going to just set another pass back to us. We draw a Jinzo, so that's really nice. We're going to go for the Change of Heart here, see what they're working with. They've got a Fiber Jar set. We're just going to tribute over that. We could potentially flip up the Fiber Jar, try and go for some plays. Maybe that would have been the correct choice, as we can't really OTK with this board. But this is a very, very annoying board for our opponent to out. And I can just get in with Jinzo and feel ultimately okay with just attacking in this way. It's a little bit risky because if they clear the Jinzo and I don't draw a good follow-up, then I could just be left with a hand of bricks. So maybe I should have just flipped up the Fiber Jar. But I feel like this is still a pretty commanding position to be in. They're just going to set one, pass back to us. We draw a Dark Condition of Chaos. Can't bring that out. We're just going to hit over their set with the Jinzo. It is a Shining Angel. They're going to bring out a DD Warrior Lady here. And this is a bit tricky because we don't necessarily want them to attack the DD Warrior Lady into the Jinzo. So what we actually want to do here, and this is a little bit awkward, but we are going to go for it, is we're actually going to bring out this Blowback Dragon and just use its effect with priority to pop the DD Warrior Lady. We could have also gone for True Nade here to play around like TT a little bit. That might have been the better play, just in case it is TT, but I don't know. I think it's fine to just play into it here. They don't know what our back row is. We do have a hand of bricks though, so maybe we should have just not played in the TT. But we're going to try and pop the DD Warrior Lady. Unfortunately, we just hit 2 tails, so that will not work, and we'll pass back to our opponent. So they're going to bring out a breaker here. They're going to choose to break our back row, which is the Tornade. They're going to attack into our 2 sets there, or 2 tokens there, and pass back to us. We draw Call the Haunted, which is really, really good here. We're going to go for the blowback on the DD Warrior Lady. Just try and clear that again. We hit a head, so that's pretty good. Unfortunately, we hit a tails there, so that's kind of rough. And we hit a tails again. Damn, that's unfortunate. The odds on hitting Blowback Dragon is actually 50-50. If my math is correct. So yeah, it's kind of unfortunate that we didn't get, one of the 50-50s correct, but we're just going to try attacking into the breaker, clear that away. Our opponent's going to go for Raigeki Break on the Blowback Dragon, pitching a Scientist, and we're just going to set this call pass back to them. They're going to go for Pot of Greed here. We actually couldn't have changed Call the Haunted to the Pot, because what we want to do with the Call the Haunted is we want to bring back this Demok here. But if we, activate Call Chain Link 2, we won't be able to get back a spell with Demok's effect. It's kind of unfortunate. They're going to bring out a Kaiku here, and they're going to attack into our tokens. Now, this is a little bit of an awkward spot. We could also just not go for the call here, saving it for after they set cards in their end phase, because likely if they've got MST, they're going to set that at the end of the turn. And we can just call back one of our monsters. But if they banish 2 of our powerful monsters, like if they banish like Demok Jinzo, that's going to be very unfortunate for us. So we're just going to go for the call now. If they've got MST, they've got MST. But if they don't, then we get a pretty good play here. So we're going to bring out this Demok. We do get back a spell. And we're going to think about what to get back. And we're actually going to get back the Change of Heart. Reason for this is, if we Change of Heart one of their monsters, we contribute over 2 for a Demok, get back another spell from Grave. We can also clear their board quite nicely by Change of Hearting the Kaiku, attacking in to the Breaker with the Demok, attacking in to the DD Whirly with the Kaiku. If they choose to banish the Kaiku, then we can just keep the Dark Magician Chaos in hand. We've still cleared their board. If not, then we get attributed off main phase 2. So that's the plan. They're going to go for a Painful here, pitching a bunch of traps. And this actually is kind of nice. We're going to give them the TT. So we know about the TT, we can play around that a little bit, and we draw a Scapegoat, which is pretty good. We are going to think about this a little bit, because with the TT known, the Demok plays a little bit less good because they can clear our Demok afterwards, but I do think that clearing their entire board is pretty good. And also, when we do summon out the Demok, we will get a spell back, so I think this is ultimately pretty good. We're going to attack in to the DD Warrior Lady with the Kaiku here. They're going to choose not to banish. We're going to attack over the Breaker with the Demok here. Now, we'll get banished, so that's kind of nice. We are going to think about this a little bit, and we are going to, because, like, if we do tribute over the Kaiku, then they get a Light and Dark Engrave, which is why we're thinking about this. We don't necessarily want to give them access to a BLS if they've got one in hand. But I figure we've got Scapegoat in hand as well, so it should ultimately be fine if we go for that, and we are just going to go for that. We're going to get back a spell. They're going to go for TT here, but we do target the pot just to draw 2 cards deeper into our deck. We draw a Reasoning and a Sacred Crane. That's pretty good. We could go for the Reasoning now, just to try and get a monster out of deck. But I don't really think it's worth going for Reasoning now because we don't want to give our opponent more info on what we've got on field. So I want to save Reasoning for next turn when we potentially go for a big push. I figure Scapegoat should be fine. Oh, I guess I do go for Reasoning now. I think this is incorrect. I think I should have just... Yeah, I guess the reason I do this is because I want to get a Crane out of the deck. Because we're very likely to hit a Crane. That's really the only card left in the deck besides the third Demock. So I want to do that to get the Crane out, draw another card, get a light on field. But I don't really think it was good to go for it here. I think I should have probably saved the Reasoning. But they call 6. We do hit the Crane. So we do get a draw off that Crane. We draw a Monster Gate. We could go for Monster Gate here. The risk behind that is we could potentially be put in a situation where we lose to deck out on next turn. If we go for Monster Gate here, mill our entire deck down to 2 cards, hit the last Crane, draw a card off that, then we do just lose the game. So I feel like we're in a good enough spot that we don't have to extend further, and I don't want to play into that sort of awkward spot. Also, if we wait till next turn for these Scapegoat tokens to be online, then I can go for Gate then. They're going to go for Comfy, hit the BLS out of hand, so I lose access to that, so that's quite unfortunate. They're going to hit over the Crane with the Shining Angel there. And in the end phase, we're going to go for this Scapegoat here. I think we're in ultimately a pretty decent spot. The awkward thing is if we don't hit Demock off this Monster Gate, then we're in a bad position. We do get to draw off the Crane, so that's something. But we don't have a really good way to clear the Shining Angel. But we're going to go for a gate here. Hopefully we hit the Demock to 50-50. We do hit the 50-50, get back that Demock there. And then we get to check our grave, see what we want to go for here. And we have a couple options. We win the game in a variety of different ways. We go for Premat just because this is more resilient than like Change of Heart in case they got like a Karibo in hand. I don't expect them to have Karibo in hand, but it's always something to consider. So we're going to Premat back the Jinzo here. Hit over their Shining Angel with the Demock, that banishes that, and we'll get in for 2400. They reveal that they had the BLS. Even if they had gone for BLS on the last turn, we still would have had game here because we would have been able to get Change of Heart instead of the Premat, Change of Heart of the BLS, and won that way. So it wouldn't have really mattered here, even if they had summoned that out. And that just shows how powerful this deck is. You know, we didn't really get to pull off the full combos with it, but even then, it had a bit of a grind game. It was able to just stick powerful monsters on board that were annoying for our opponent to deal with. And so we did pretty good there. So that was a pretty good showing for the deck. We're going to go into game 2. We don't side in anything because we're not going first, so we don't really need to. And hopefully we'll still be able to win with, with this hand, we'll probably definitely be able to win because this is a really, really good hand. They're going to set 2, summon out Shining Angel, pass back Dust. They go for a Trap Dust Shoot here, and they send back our Crane. I'm honestly fine with that because, you know, we've got enough draw to be fine with that, really. We're going to go for a pot here. Draw 2. We draw double Reasoning. They're going to go for a Trap Dust Shoot, though, on the pot. So, you know, it doesn't really change anything because we don't have any monsters here. So, you know, we fire Reasoning, and we are going to hit a Crane because they call 8, which I think it's still the correct choice to call 8, especially when you know your opponent doesn't have Democks in hand and stuff. But we do get a draw there, so we're going to go for Reasoning again. They call 8 again. We hit a Blowback Dragon, so that's pretty nice. We're going to try and blow back their Shining Angel, just see what happens here. We hit Tails. Will we hit double heads? Come on. Okay, that's 1 heads. Down to the last coin, and we do hit that last head, so we will be able to pop the Shining Angel there. We think about going for the upstart or not because we don't necessarily want to give them more life points if we're trying to push for damage. But we've got 3,900 damage on board, so this is a 3-turn clock no matter how you slice it. And so upstart won't change that clock. So I'm fine going for the upstart. We draw into a Snap Steal here. We're going to go for Comfy just to get a peek at what they're working with, and so then we can sort of like plan our play a little bit better. We see they've got Raigeki Break, MST. And we are actually going to send the MST. This may seem weird as Raigeki Break can pop anything, but MST can't. And the reason we go for the MST is because these cards require a discard for each of them, and giving them 2 of them and 1 draw means that they can't use both of them. So I think this is the better option than just sending 1 Raigeki Break. We're going to attack in for 3,900 here. And we don't want to go for card D because, you know, we're fine with the hand that they've got. We could have gone for card D before going for the Comfy, but I think we've got a pretty good opener hand here. So I think this is fine. They're going to set 2, pass back to us. We draw another True Nade. We could just use up that True Nade, but we're just going to go for the blowback here instead. Go for the Raigeki break. They pitch a Raigeki break, which means that the other set is probably not the Raigeki break. So I'm just going to simplify the game state by just going for MST on the back row. It's a heavy storm. We will lose our blowback dragon there. We're going to set the Snatch Steal, then go for card D. The Trinades are not really as good right now because they don't have any spell and traps. And if they draw something off the top, I mean, I guess that's fine, but if they just set a back row, then we can just attack him with Crane and feel fine that way. We draw Scapegoat Monster Gate. That's pretty good. We're going to go for Monster Gate on our Crane here. Just try and hit something. We hit a Demock. We're going to go for the Premat here, and Premat will be the end of the game. We go for Premat, not targeting the Sacred Crane. We target the Blowback Dragon there, and that will be exact lethal, 5100. And yeah, so this is very, very good for us. I mean, honestly, there wasn't really much they could have done that game. We talked after the match, and they said maybe they shouldn't have sided into the Trap Dust Shoots. But even if they hadn't sided into Trap Dust Shoots and sided into things like Waboku instead, we had enough of like a difficult board for them to break here that we were doing perfectly fine. Like, sure, they had like a Raigeki break online to pop one of our stuff. But realistically, we would have been in a very, very good spot here either way. So yeah, this deck is just so powerful, so busted. And it's just much more aggressive than pretty much any other deck in the format. Can set up very, very difficult board states for other decks to deal with because it has these big monsters, and Raigeki and Dark Hole are both gone. This deck is just, in my opinion, the best deck in the format. And so I think that if this format was played, it would be tier 0 and this deck would be on top. But, you know, this is just one match and just a bunch of theory surrounding this deck. There definitely are, you know, different ideas surrounding this format. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts about this format in the comments down below. This is going to be my only video on it because, again, it's a hypothetical format. And again, I think this format is pretty cut and dry as a tier 0. But if there are, you know, enough very interesting ideas in the comments, maybe I'll revisit it at a later point. Also, if you enjoy this sort of content, please be sure to subscribe. We're about to dive into Warrior format really soon, and it's going to be a very exciting time for the channel. So subscribe if you want to be here for that. Also, if you want to support me directly, I do have a Patreon, and if you join the Patreon, you will be able to get shouted out in these videos. So big shout outs to Rinswin, GMYFS, Brent Donker, and Pork Coon. Thank you so much for supporting me directly like this. It really means a lot to me. And also, if you want to join the Discord server, links in the description down below, you can play games in this format and any other format that I've featured on the channel, as well as playing in the monthly tournaments and the local tournaments that we hold weekly. Give the video a like if you enjoyed it, and until next time, I've been Ben from YGO from Zero, and I'm signing off.